Thank you all for joining today. We're very excited to be able to present IDA-6, our latest infusion device analyzer that was recently launched. And my name is Mike Nguyen. I'm a senior product manager that worked with the R&D team to develop and bring it to market. And I'll be presenting today along with Justin Ross.
Hello, I'm Justin Ross. I'm part of the Fluke Biomedical team. I'm one of our sales engineers. I also been working with this team bringing out the IDA-6 for the last few months. I am very excited to bring this to you because as you hear about game-changing devices, this is really one of them. We've brought two of our products together to bring in this IDA-6, and the results are just outstanding. So with that, I believe, Mr. Mike, let's get this kicked off.
Yeah, great. So today we're scheduled for an hour, so we're going to spend just a few minutes on general infusion device introduction, what they are, why they're important. From there, we'll go on and provide a brief overview of some of the key features of the IDA-6 device itself. And then Justin will take us in through a live demo of how IDA-6 is used in application. And that will be the bulk of the webinar. Then we'll leave time at the end for question and answers.
All righty. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I'm assuming if everybody's attending this webinar, we're all pretty familiar with what exactly an infusion pump is. Outside of being part of the Fluke team, I'm also a firefighter and a first responder. So the reason I like to tell you that is because the very basics of what we're trying to do with an infusion pump is get fluids into a patient, right? So you can do something as simplistic as taking an infusion bag, running a tubing set and spiking it into the patient, but it's very hard to control that amount of fluid. You know, there's a lot of things that play into factor. If the customer, not customers, if our patient stands up, it changes the amount of distance from the bag to the patient. If the patient lays down, it's really hard to regulate the amount of fluids. And not all fluids are created equal. Some of these can be medicines, some of them are narcotics, some of them are extremely potent. So fluid regulation is very, very important. Let's go to the next slide, please. So there's a few ways that we can drive these into the patient. And one of the ones that's not listed here, if anybody's old as I am and can remember the old drip counters, that was the first way where you could actually count the drips or regulate the drips, but it really didn't pump it. So if your patient changed height, those are still hard to get those fluids into it. So things you might see is peristaltic pumps. You'll see these in higher, or the roller style pump, I'm sorry, on the left. You'll see these used a lot in large volume applications, sometimes like feeding pumps, heart-lung bypass machines, things like that, where you're moving large volumes of fluid. But if you need finer control or smaller volumes, you might see a linear peristaltic pump with a bunch of fingers that push through and deliver them. This is very common in a lot of infusion pumps. Another one that you might see in this same category might be one of the cassette style, where it uses a set of pistons to drive the pumps through, the fluid through. Again, this is good for medium range fluid control, but not super fine fluids. If you need to do super fine fluids where you're pushing maybe a milliliter or half a milliliter an hour, you might see something like a syringe pump. Well, now that gives us a very wide range of things we have to test. You know, we can be talking about for infusion delivery, anything from tenths or hundredths of a milliliter an hour to thousands of a milliliter an hour. So how are we going to go ahead and measure all those things and make sure that it's working right? So with that, there's lots of things that can go wrong. An FDA study here saw there's 56,000 reportable incidents and 500 plus deaths between 2005 and 2009. So things do go wrong. You know, I was a field tech before I joined the Fluke team, and we saw things go wrong a lot. Some of them are human error. Some was set up with the pump. Some was introduced in the wrong drug library. You know, there's a lot of things that have to go into consideration when we're administering a drug: the patient's weight, their body mass, their history, their background. So lots of things could go wrong with that administration. There's an argument a lot now that infusion pumps, you know, they are so advanced that they're going to deliver the rates accurately over time. But, you know, a lot of the fluids that we push can be caustic, and they can get into the mechanisms and start to cause issues. There's free flow protection issues we have to consider. You know, when we're setting it up, making sure that it's going to clamp off, setting up the IV, making sure it's going to clamp off that infusion line and not just free flow in the patient. Air bubbles going into the patients, incorrect readings or setups, lots of different issues that can go wrong. So what are the things that we can check and how we're going to check them? So things that we're going to do or things that we're going to test for is volume and flow. That's two of them. So let's talk about these graduated breaths. This is the simplest, cheapest, easiest way to go. You get a graduated cylinder. It's pretty straightforward. You flow the fluid into it, and there you have a volume. They are affordable. You can get glass ones, you can get plastic ones, but there's some issues with these. I walked into a shop a few months ago, and I watched a technician using a 1 liter syringe trying to measure to 1/100th of a milliliter. Well, each of the designations was 5 milliliters. There is no way you could get the appropriate accuracy. So do we have the right resolution graduated cylinder? Did you dump it out? You have to reset it. You have to dump these, and you have to make sure they're dried out before you start. That first drip or two and the last drip or two, do those count towards your total volume? So there are some issues. Oh, yeah, here's another one. Making sure that you're reading on the level. I am an older gentleman these days. I am a whopping old age of 45. And I'm here to tell you I don't bend over as easy as I used to. So I tend to get a little bit lazy on bending down and making sure that I'm reading this thing spot level on. And that can throw off my readings. We can use the scale method. So you can put that cylinder or a graduated cylinder onto a scale and weigh the weight of the volume of the water. Pure distilled water weighs 1.00 grams per 1.00 milliliters. So this is a really easy way to go. Scales are easy to obtain. Here's some issues with them. They're not very portable. These high resolution scales are going to read to 1/100th or 1,000th of a gram, need to be leveled. They need to be zeroed, right? So these are typically set up on a bench, and now you're going to get the infusion pumps and bring them back to you. How far of a distance are you walking to find your infusion pumps? I hear the argument, well, a lot of ours are right to central sterile. That's great for the top 75%. The bottom 25% becomes more and more of a trick. Again, that residual volume. Did you prime it? Did you not prime it? Did you dump it out? Did you zero it out? Did you tear it? Lots of possible issues there. Now let's look at electronic analyzers. There is some training that has to go on with those. They do reduce the human error though. Increase productivity and test times. It's easy to reproduce your results. Sometimes you can even capture your electronic data. Some downfalls. A lot of those have glass tubes in them. Glass tubes that are in a warm, dark environment. If you don't use pure distilled water, or even if you do use pure distilled water and you leave in that warm, dark environment, you can grow bacteria and occlude the photosensors that it utilizes. A lot of these require priming, and that priming might have to be done in between each and every test that you run with that analyzer. So those are some ways of talking, the things we can measure for flow and volume, and I pretty much talked all about volume there. Well, flow is simply just volume over time, so you might also need a stopwatch, and then you have to do some calculations there. Let's move on to talk about pressure. Another thing that we can, I think we want, nope, we're good. So let's, we'll stop here for a second. I wanted to show you something. On the left is the internal workings of one of our IDA-5s. So if you're familiar with the IDA-5, IDA-4 is something very similar. I mentioned that glass chamber. You can see it there on the far left by the word IDA-5. That's that glass tube. So what would happen is this would fill up with fluid, and then once it passed those photo eyes, each of those photo eyes were a set designation. But the problem is over time, that glass tube could get cloudy, or if you accidentally used mineral water. So there's lots of issues there. And we'll talk about the system on the left. This is the new IDA-6. What you notice, though, there is no more glass tube. All right, Dan. Well, now let's move on. Let's talk about pressure. So with pressure, we can use analog gauges. We can use digital gauges. Does it have enough accuracy? That's my one big question for them. Analog gauges, if you happen to overpressurize them once, they don't like to read right again after that. I used to get really good at that with anesthesia machines and blowing those things up. And it requires you to be paying attention to it. So if you're reading for an occlusion, you have to be watching that meter when your pump hits max pressure and starts to back down off. Another question there is if you want to measure that residual flow after it backs off the pressure, you can't really do that with a pressure gauge. So there's some challenges there as well. Electronic analyzers, again, we can streamline some things again, reduce the error, reduce the setup time in between testing, and you can go ahead and maybe even automate your work with some of the analyzers out there. So those are some of the current test methods that we have. If you want to advance it one more slide, please, sir. So those are some of the things that we're testing and some of the ways that we can go about it. We can test that flow, that volume, and the pressure. Those are things that we can check very readily. Moving on now, let's start to talk a little bit about the IDA-6. Mr. Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Great overview on infusion pumps themselves. Now, I just want to spend a few minutes to highlight some of the key features that differentiate IDA-6. And then as we get into the demo portion, you'll be able to see this in action. But first, just as a high-level overview, really the IDA-6 is an infusion device analyzer, excuse me. It is a precision instrument that examines the performance of the medical infusion devices and measures the flow rate and volume supplied, as well as the pressure generated. And with the IDA-6, you can test up to 4 pumps at the same time. It can test the performance of a wide variety of infusion devices, such as peristaltic, syringe, drip counters, CAD, as well as volumetric types. And with IDA-6, as I think Justin mentioned earlier, we no longer need to use the micro 90 as we did in the IDA-5. So that's a key benefit here. We spent years developing this product, and we worked hand in hand with a handful of customers to really make sure that we were building the right product. And through those relationships, we were really able to identify what are the key benefits that the IDA-6 offers that they really appreciated, and some of the things that they commented on most often. So we have these highlighted here. The first thing you'll see here is OneQA enabled. This is our software that's built onto the device that allows for automation of test procedures. It will collect the data on the device and then automatically sync to your PC. And it's a really powerful tool that Justin will go into a little bit more in just a moment here. The other thing that we heard is one of the pain points is that there's a lot of downtime involved when the units need to be sent in for calibration or repair. And so we took that input and we've actually made the channels individualized such that they can be removed and sent in one at a time or multiple at a time for calibration or repair. But it allows you to still continue to use the IDA-6 and the channels at the same time so that you never have any downtime. IntelliPump technology, this is a really cool feature that we've understood the pain points of testing is very messy, it's time consuming, it can be complicated, and this is one way that we've been able to address that is by allowing to use the same water to circulate into a system. And we've got a slide here to help illustrate what that looks like and talk a little bit more about those benefits. In terms of performance, it has an enhanced speed and accuracy compared to IDA-5. So we can talk a little bit more about that in the coming slides. And then ease of use. If you look at infusion analyzers today, usually there's a lot of buttons and there's complicated screens and you have to try to navigate, and there's a very small screen. With the IDA-6, you'll notice that there's no button. There's one button, it's the power button. The rest is a touch screen, and it's designed with the user interface to simplify for the users in mind. So the workflow is very seamless, and it's very simple to be able to use. And one of the things that we heard from our customers is they were able to use the device without needing the manual to show them how. And then finally, we have a Wi-Fi capability. So by using a Wi-Fi adapter, you have the ability to run tests without needing to have your laptop with you. And you can run those tests, and then if you're connected to Wi-Fi, that will automatically sync back to your PC. And if you can also run it offline, and then once you get back connected online, it will automatically sync those results. So those are some of the key features that the IDA-6 brings. Now, looking at the physical device itself here, it does have a 10-inch high-resolution touchscreen,
There are 4 channels that are removable, as we touched on earlier. Next slide, please. If you look here, this is the bottom side of the device. On the left here, you have the 4 individual channels, and it's a very simple to remove those for calibration and or repairs. It's just 2 simple mounting screws. It does have the ability to remove them, so you can send in the individual channels. You also, if you have multiple displays and multiple channels, you can swap channels between displays. And then, of course, it also allows for flexibility and upgrading. So if you have a limited budget, you can purchase the IDA-6 display with 1 or 2 channels and then add in additional channels over time. So it does offer that option. Looking at the backside here, it has a really large carrying handle. So portability, we know, can be important depending on what type of business you're working in. But we also have incorporated the latest USB-C communication ports, as well as 3 USB ports for different peripherals, such as a barcode scanner, which is a really neat feature that we'll touch on. You can use a mouse or a laptop, as well as a printer. And then we do have the outlets in the backside. So just one last thing I wanted to highlight here is the IntelliFlow technology. And that's the ability to run circulated water through the system. So it does have a reverse pressure sensor on the outlet side. So it allows the water to run through the inside, the inlet of the pump, the front of that channel, through the device, which measures the flow and volume. And then it has the ability to pump water back up into an IV bag or a reservoir, and then continuously flow through. And because it has this pressure sensor in the backside, there's no issues of it throwing off the results. So this really does allow for a much cleaner, simpler process. It doesn't require repriming, so you can simply run a test for the infusion pump that you have, remove it, put in another pump, and then continue the test. So you don't need to reprime, you don't need to fuss with the water and spills, and then there's no micro 90 required. So with that being said, here's a couple of the differences between the 2 devices, between our IDA-5 and our IDA-6. We talked a little bit about most of these, so we won't spend too much time. I think the most value here is going to be able to see it in action. So if we can move on to the live portion.
Alrighty, so I'm really excited to do this demo today. This is one of those test devices that I feel really changes the industry, and I've been really excited to talk about the IDA-6. This has been a great project to be working on, and I can't wait to show you guys all the things that are built into the IDA-6. So there's a good chance that, because there's so many things, I'm not going to get them all covered in this time. So I do ask that you go ahead and check out our webpage and check out the specifications on it, or talk to your local rep, because again, there's just so much packed into this IDA-6 that's hard to cover it all in a single demo. But with that said, let's get started. And what I'm going to start with is a 50 microliter syringe. So here we go, a 50 microliter syringe, or 0.05 milliliters. So it looks like a large syringe, but when I draw this syringe full, get rid of that air bubble. There we go. All right, so it's full. What is the total volume of this syringe? So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and push this out in my hand, and you'll notice that I'm pushing it, and there's 1 droplet of water, and 2. The entire volume of the syringe is 2 single droplets of water. Now, you're going to wonder, what am I going to do with these 2 droplets of water? Because a lot of the infusion pump analyzers on the market aren't sensitive enough to pick up that difference of 2 single droplets of water. So let's go ahead and we're going to go, let's fill this up again. Let's do that. Let's fill this up. Here we go. There. All right. And I'm going to go into my manual mode of my IDA-6 on channel 4 here. And I'm going to go ahead and connect the syringe And I'm under flow and volume, I'm going to push play. Now watch, as soon as I start to push this syringe in, we're going to get a volume. It's going to measure right here. So here we go. And pushing. And you notice we had an instant pickup of volume. .51 milliliters. I'm going to let this sit for a second, and the test went ahead and stopped. Now, what I want to tell you about that is the IDA-6 is so smart that it knows it takes exactly 3 microliters to start a test. So it'll go and it'll measure the average flow, then go back in time 3 microliters and make that start point. And then at the end of the test, it knows once it sees more than a 50% drop in flow that the test is probably ended. So if it doesn't see the volume go above that 50% mark again, it's going to mark that as the end of the test. And because of this, this feeds into the resolution of the IDA-6 of being better than 1% for most of our tests. And that's just amazing, amazing technology. The second thing I want to tell you about that is if I did this same thing with other analyzers, it'd take 10, 20, or even 100 syringes, 100 of these syringes to get that test to start. And this started with less than 1. And actually, I'll show you something else that's kind of neat about this. I'm not actually going to, I don't need to push this in. I'm just going to discard this test and start over again. If I start my test and then connect this, it's so sensitive actually that when I connect this in, it senses it as a flow. So it is very, very sensitive, super high resolution. All right, we'll just discard this test here real quick and get rid of this syringe. All right, so I'm going to come back in and show you a lot of the features of the IDA-6, but I want to get a test started because testing takes some time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to channel 1. This is a 4-channel IDA-6. I only have channel 1 and channel 4 inserted for today. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into manual mode, and I'm going to use my barcode scanner here. And this is an accessory that Fluke sells for the IDA-6. It's a really nice one, barcode scanner. The reason I really like this is it doesn't go to sleep. Some other barcode scanners, you have to wake them back up and reconnect the Bluetooth every time it powers off. This one is not the case. The other thing about it is it reads barcodes very accurately as well as QR codes. So no matter how you have the barcode system set up or your ID system set up in your hospital, it'll really pick them up, as well as it picks up serial number barcodes. So that's a big time saver. I can just scan that serial number and enter it in versus having to hand type it in. So what we're going to do is I have an infusion pump here, and it's got a barcode here on the side. I'm going to hit my automatic mode this time, and I'm going to take my barcode scanner and scan the barcode on the side of this. There we go. And it automatically pulled it up. There it is. And the most recent test is the one on top. It's the one it recommends. So once I start this test, I can just simply follow the instructions on the screen and it'll walk me right through. We used the Fluke Biomedical OneQA workflow automation software to build these procedures and insert them into here. So this is a really big time saver. In fact, what I did as an experiment is I did this and I took this exact PM to one of my sites and I had them run it. And I had a new technician with less than a week's work experience, and simply following 3 instructions: 1, power this on; 2, use the barcode scanner; and 3, read the screen. She was able to walk through a Baxter Sigma PM with no additional instructions. Everything else was included in the IDA-6. So let's just go ahead and we'll start that. I'll set this off to the side. I'm going to hit run here. And I programmed in what supplies we're going to need. So let's go ahead and hit continue. And what I was able to do is insert a picture of all the supplies that I would need to do this test. So they're right here. Here's all the supplies I'll need. And if I hit continue on this, now I'll be going to be doing my visual inspection. And we'll hit continue. And it says determine the software version. So I have to turn on my pump here. And it is software 6.05. So I don't need an external keyboard. I can use the nice big keyboard on the screen. And 6.05. And OK. Very good. And my next test might be verify is the serial number correct. Now, if I verify the serial number is correct and I push pass, you know it goes green and automatically advances to the next step. We'll see what happens if you fail one here. So now here's the keypad test. Now, after you do a few 100,000 of these pumps, you memorize how to do this. But this is nice for people who are new into the field, or it might be in a few months. So what I did is I copied this entire excerpt right out of the service manual, and I put it into the OneQA software. So I could just simply follow all these instructions, do it on my pump, and once I got through, I'm not going to do it all because it takes a few minutes, did the keypad test, pass. Well, let's say no, it didn't. Oh, and you saw we had a red light. Well, there's two things I can make the software do, and it's either stop the procedure and fix it, or go ahead and let it complete the procedure and fail the entire work order. Or maybe I hit the wrong button. So if I need that and I hit the wrong button, I can simply go down here to the bottom to these 3 lines, go back to that test and retest it and mark pass. I can only do that though till I complete the work order. Once the work order is complete, I can't advance that anymore, or I can't change it anymore. I'd have to redo the entire test. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. So let's go to the occlusion test. Here's all the instructions on how to set up the upstream occlusion, as well as a picture on how to do the upstream occlusion. Built right into it. Here I can zoom in a little bit so you can see. Everything is built. Everything is right into the screen. So you see that whole picture? Here's all the instructions. We'll back it back out here. All right, so we're going to skip this, and we're just going to say that we did this test. Yes, we did the test. Continue. Now let's do the downstream occlusion test. All right, my infusion pump's going to get cranky at me. So let's go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to follow these instructions. Exit this. Exit. All right, so let's pick an area here. OK. And follow the instructions here. It's going to take a second to type all this in. BA. OK. Cursor, drag and press OK. Take it to basic. All right. Now, again, all this would be as part of your specific pump instructions. So I'm going to follow this through, and I need to do 100 milliliters an hour and 50 milliliters. Okay. Primary bag. All right. And then we'll go down. It takes longer to set these up. Volume to rate. What did I say up there for rate? 100 milliliters an hour. And volume to be infused is 50 milliliters. Okay, okay, okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and we'll start this up. And I have my test set here, and we're going to talk about this test set here once we get the pump running. So we'll insert this into here. And continuing to follow all the pump instructions. All right, I'll move this around. Okay, that's open. This is open. All right. Now, I'm going to hit continue, and I'm going to do my occlusion pressure. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run on my infusion pump. Oh, these pumps are so finicky some days. Here we go. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure I get a flow established first. And I'm going to go ahead and push play. Now my test is running, and you'll see my pressure here, and my pressure is going to start to increase. I'm up to 7.39 psi, 9.81, and I have my limits programmed right into here. My time to peak so far, it took 19 seconds there. Here's my occlusion here. My peak pressure is 13.69 psi, or a plus 5.3% tolerance from where we had it. It's within passing score, and there's my passing result, the green arrow dot right here. So I'm going to push continue. All right, now we're into the flow rate accuracy test. So let's go ahead and stop this. Stop. And I have my instructions. And in this one, I've done it so many times, I just programmed it into here. My volume is 50 milliliters, and my mean flow is 200. So let's go back on my test. We're going to clear the program on my pump and do all this again. B, A, okay. And I have to tell you guys as I'm programming this in that I'm a bit of a tool nut. I love collecting tools, especially things that are really awesome. Primary rate is 200. Okay, and my volume to be infused is 50. And once I got into this IDA-6, I got to tell you, I got my units to demo with my customers, and even though I don't PM IV pumps anymore, I had to get another one because I had to have an IDA-6 for my collection. This thing is so neat. Volume given, okay. All right, so my infusion pump is set up. Now you notice something here. I didn't have to prime the system. The reason I didn't have to prime it is since this uses a piston-driven stepper motor, once I pushed all the fluid through here, there's no more air bubbles. So I only had to prime one time. It's not like the IDA-5 or the 4 where I used to lose my prime in between each of the tests. I already did it. So some of those PMs like the Laris, where that's built into it, go ahead and just let it do its thing, but you don't have to do it to satisfy the IDA-6's needs anymore. So the occlusion pressure took care of that. The other thing I need to mention is volume is volume. So with the IDA-6, or the IDA-5, we used to get air bubbles from the solution. Here it doesn't matter so much as that in the IDA-6, we had that glass pipette. You had to watch those air bubbles because it was volume wasn't seen. So this is the piston-driven stepper motor. Even if it has an air bubble, it'll still measure it as volume. All right, now that I'm set up, I'm going to go ahead and push play here. And I'm going to hit OK here and run. Are all my clamps open? Yes. All right, so I have this running on channel 1. And you can see here, there's two lines. You can see this little blue line here. That's my instant flow, and my big purple line, that's my average flow. And over time, this average flow will start to level out. So this is a really nice thing to see, and there's some information above across the bottom. So a question I get asked a lot is, okay, well, now that I have that running, can I start another one? 100%. I just go down here to channel 4, and I can start another test on my channel 4. We're still here in the manual test. We'll just discard that information. Discard. All right. So if I wanted to see both at the same time, I push this button here, and I can see both screens at once. Everything's going on channel 1, and everything is going on channel 4. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight channel 1 here so I can keep a little bit of an eye. But I'm going to let this test run, and let's talk about some more features about the IDA-6. So I mentioned that this is a 2-channel version. It can accept up to 4 channels. So let's go ahead, and I want to talk to you about this because this is awesome. When it's time to send in the IDA-6 for calibration, I don't have to send in my entire IDA-6. So I happen to have another IDA-6 here. And the only thing I have to do is take out the channel. So it takes a T10 screwdriver. I take out 2 screws. This one, and I already took the other screw out earlier. The one over here. And then this channel will slide right out. I'm going to disconnect it. And this is what I sent in for calibration. The calibration is housed right on a device as long with the serial number. So it corresponds to the serial number in this pump. So if I get this back and I set it into a different IV pump, it's not a big deal because this serial number will be recorded into the IDA-6 and attached to that work order in OneQA. So you know the exact channel serial number that you use for doing your tests. So I could send this out. Maybe what I want to do is say I have a lot of these in my shop. I have shops that have 10,000 pumps. They buy a bunch of these, and then they go ahead and buy a few spare channels, or they buy 4 channels so they have some spares. I can simply take another channel, plug it back into the IDA-6, like so, slide it back in, insert my screw again, and my IDA-6 is ready to start testing infusion pumps. I never had any downtime. So a spare channel is pretty exciting because you don't lose that time while your IDA-6 is out of the shop. And again, if you have 10,000 IV pumps or even a few thousand IV pumps, you know that losing your IDA-6, your infusion pump analyzer, can be a real pill. All right, put that screw back in. There we go. So let's put it back together. While I have it here in my hands, you see the big screen, the power button. Again, this is a 2-channel option. On the back side, a few things I want to cover. You'll see 3 USB ports. This you connect to a printer, or in fact, here I have 2 dongles that I'm using. This is an older Wi-Fi adapter, and this is for my barcode scanner, and they simply plug right into the back. So I get questions about this a lot. Well, how about these aren't, what if something hits them? Well, if you look from it this way, this plane here protects anything that's plugged into the USB ports. So I've shipped this. This was the first IDA-6 I ever had, and I've shipped it all over the world with these dongles. And this is an old dongle. It was big. I shipped it all over the world, and I never took these out, and there was no damage to them. So my point is the IDA-6 protects them the way back in there. All right, take this out. Take that out. Over here, you have a USB-C port. So the IDA-6 I have on my bench right now, I'm connected by Wi-Fi to my CMMS system in OneQA. But if I don't have access to a Wi-Fi network, I can just use this USB-C port to pull my data in and out. And the IDA-6 is capable of saving up to 10,000 test results inside of it. And then you can sync it up when it's done. So I could either do that, or I can use that Wi-Fi network. Both of them are really great options. We'll go ahead and set this down. Oh, hey, remember, whatever channel you hook up in the front, make sure on the back that you hook up a drain line to it. And let's talk about that drain. This is a great segue here. I'm going to slide this off to the side here just a little bit. So you notice that I don't have a standard test setup here. I'm only using a 250 milliliter solution bag. And you notice I have 2 hoses set into it. The reason I can get away with this is the IDA-6 uses that piston-driven stepper motor. This is that IntelliPump technology we're talking about. So as my infusion pump is pulling it through the this test set here around here to my infusion pump, it's then going into my analyzer, back out the back side, and then back up this tube, and the IDA-6 is actually pumping that fluid back into my bag. So what's cool about this is I can test all day long, all week long, and this level will never change as long as I don't change out this tubing or drop it on the floor. This is great for a few reasons, because I am now portable. So if I take this bag, like I could take this bag and turn it over. It's not like the ones we normally use where we making a slit in the bag. Here, it's all contained. So this is a really nice system that makes it portable now. This is IntelliPump technology. We didn't think about this, but when you talk about the amount of time that you can save in doing your PMs, it's not just what the IDA-6 sets up for you and its time savings and how easy it is, but if you're out there searching the hospital, how far of a walk is it from your patient floor back to your desk, right? It's a ways. So the first few pumps is easy enough if you can get them from Central Supply, they bring them to you. But it's when you have to go search out for the last 10% of your pumps or more, you can now take the IDA-6 with you on a crash cart with a little test setup like this and a recirculating bag, and you can take the IDA-6 to your pumps and save those miles and miles of walking back and forth to your shop. This is awesome. Trust me, this is awesome. And this is all I need. Good question. For all those of you saying, well, my PM requires so much headspace, get a taller IV pump or IV pole like this crash cart and just stick it way up there in the air. And then again, it'll just continue to recirculate that fluid for you. Your head pressure never changes. You get the same results in the morning as you do at the end of the day. This is a really, really nice feature. All right, let's check back in on our IV pump here real quick. Let's see where we're at. So right here we see our average flow. It's in purple, and our instant flow is in blue. So you can see each time one of those peristaltic fingers resets. That's great. Right now we've pushed so far 23.47 milliliters, and our mean flow is 190.6 milliliters an hour. You can see your tolerances in it. The total test time so far has been 7 minutes and 36 seconds. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it sounds like this IV pump's got a bad part in it. I can hear it starting to growl at me a little bit. Right here's my instant back pressure. So everything I need to know is right on that screen. If I say, hey, I want to look at this graph a little bit, I see there's some gaps here. What's going on here? I can simply touch on my screen, on my graph, and blow that up and see in more detail what's happening. And maybe I want to do some troubleshooting in my IV pump here. I'm going to be curious to see if this one passes its test. All right, let's get back out of this. And boop, make that small. All right, let's go over here to channel 4. So let's go back into manual mode, and let's talk about some more of the things we can do in manual mode. We talked about this flow and volume. For my OEMs, those techs who want to know, see a bell curve, you have your normal screen here for your flow versus time. If you touch in here and then go to graph flow versus time, and you can go down here to a trumpet curve, which is really nice. And anything that has a red star, you have to program that in. So your sample interval, your observation window, your start time, stop time, your delta, all that gets programmed into it. Once you program that in, you'll then be able to graph your trumpet curve across the screen. Make that small again, and you have your time, your volume, and your mean flow. So if I go to my volume, or any of these, I could set my expected volume. So in this case, maybe it's going to be 50 milliliters, 50 milliliters. I can set my high limit, and maybe it's going to be 51, and my low is going to be 49. Or some people read in percentages. So I could take this back, and let me just clear this out, and I'll make it 5%. So my high limit's 5%, 5%, and my low limit can be 5%. So again, I can do it by volume or percentage. All right, same thing with my time, and again with my mean flow. Some other nice things on the screen here is I also can add notes. So if I'm partway through my test, and like this one over here that's making some noise, you know, that's a great scenario. Let's do this. Let's get out of this. Let's go back to channel 1, and I'm going to add a note because right here, pump is noisy. There we go. So now I have a note about this IV pump that's making some noise in there. I need to look at it better. Okay, back to channel 4. All right, so I can add my notes into it. I can introduce back pressure. So if I'm an OEM and I'm doing some testing on this, or I have some specific tests where I want to sense a back pressure, I can add back pressure to it. When is my IV pump going to start and stop? All that can be programmed into here. That delay can be extended out for when it stops. All that's there. Here's my occlusion screen. We saw that in the automatic mode and all of its features. And here's one that I love, bolus and PCA. I used to do a lot of pain pumps and PCA pumps, and it was really difficult to measure that bolus flow, especially because a lot of them want you to do 10 or 15 or 5, 10 different titrations at that bolus flow, and you have to average them together. So with the IDA-6, it allows you to program your base flow, so maybe it's like 5 milliliters an hour or whatever, and then you can go ahead and hit that bolus, and it'll measure your bolus duration, your bolus volume, and your bolus flow. So then you can do 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 of those, and it's going to average them together. So you can get rid of the high and the low and get you good bolus readings on it. And you'll actually see a baseline with your square boluses. So that's a really, really nice feature, and it does it very accurately here. All right, let's go back and let's check back to our pump again here. So we are 11 minutes and 43 seconds into it. We're at 37.32 milliliters, and my mean flow is still around 190. So we're right against that limit at 4.9, and our limit was 5.0. We'll see how this pump finishes out here. All right, so while that's doing it, let's go into our screens. So here's my asset library. So what I can do is I can program IDA-1QA with all my asset, all my IV pumps, and it'll upload all that into the IDA-6 for me, so I don't have to do it manually. If I do have to do one on the run, this is really cool. I can use this barcode scanner and scan a new device, and it'll actually walk me through. If we have time here, let's do this. Yeah, let's just go ahead and do it. We'll go to channel 4, and let's discard this test. So we're going to add an asset to that list. So channel 4, we're going to run a procedure, and we're going to find a barcode that we haven't used yet. So let's go down. Let's go. Where's the barcode at? We're going to pretend my box here is a new IV pump. I simply scan this barcode, and it pulls it up on the screen. So here's my number. Create an asset, and now I can select from it. It's a Baxter, Sigma Pace. And if I needed to, I could have added my serial number into there. and I'd select the appropriate test for it. I just added another IV pump to my system. It was that simple. That's all I had to do, like 3 buttons there. Man, I get all excited about that. All right, so let's just discard this test, or discard that piece. Back to channel 1. We're still running away. And let's go back to our asset screen again. So we just added an asset to it. Here's all the procedures I have populated into this IDA-6. And again, I can have as many procedures as I need, especially if I have the OneQA, the full OneQA version. If I get the OneQA Lite that comes with the IDA-6, I can have 5 procedures in here, so 5 different IV pumps. Or maybe I want to have an incoming inspection and a full-blown PM and whatever I need, up to 5, the software that comes with the IDA-6, as many as you want if you get the full-blown OneQA. All right, let's go back into the screen, procedures, results. So here's every test I've run with the IDA-6. You can see I've been doing demos and I've failed the procedures, so I have red X's. If I passed it, I'd have a green light here, and I could go into these, and I can see what happened. I can go down here to my notes, and I can see, oh, it failed right here, and it failed here. I can't change anything on these screens now because I already finalized it, but I can see what happened without going back to my PC. It's right here. Again, just touch on it, and there's why it failed. So obviously, if you're doing a whole bunch of IV pumps, this list is going to be quite extensive. I've only done 2 since last time I sank, so you're only seeing 2 today. Back out. Let's go back in here one more time. So assets, procedures, results, users. If I have OneQA Lite, I'm allowed to have 1 user. If I have the full-blown OneQA, I can have everybody. Oh, my test stopped. So I'm going to pause on users. Let's go back to 1, and I'm going to hit silence on this. And you'll notice now our total volume was 47.62 milliliters. We had 50 set, so that's a negative 4.8% tolerance, which is passing. And my mean flow was 200 milliliters an hour. We were at 190.5 or 4.7% tolerance, and it passed. So this step passed, and I have a green light here. So now that that's done, if I needed to and it failed, I could push this circle button here and go back and redo the test. But it passed. I'm going to push continue here, and I got a passing score here. So here's all my information for the pump, my asset ID. If I had my work order ID, I could type it into here for my work order, or I will just make a number up there. Here we go. Everything I need to know is here. If I want to go back and look at any of my steps, here's all my steps. I didn't finalize this test yet, so I can go back and I can change any of these right now. But once I verify all this information and I push complete, that data is now locked. I can no longer alter that work order. And it's saved into the background. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop this pump because it's going to scream at us the entire time we're showing the rest of this demo. All right, door open, silence, get rid of this, and off. Shutting down. All righty, so let's go back into the screen here, and we're down to users. And I had mentioned with the OneQA Lite that comes with IDA-6, you have 1 user. If you have the full-blown OneQA, I can have as many users as I have logged into my OneQA system. This is awesome. There's more about that in the OneQA webinars and on the OneQA white papers. But essentially what that is, that's my electronic signature. So I know I did all this work. Or I can have my new technician or whoever it is, their information will be in here and they can select from it. Users. All right. Settings. This screen has a lot of information on it. So here's all of our different units. So millimeters of mercury for pressure, millimeters of mercury, kilopascals, PSI, or bar. I don't have to translate anything. I can put whatever units I need into it. Flow. All right, here we go. For all my Baxter and all those other technicians who are measuring in volume, right here, milliliters an hour, and volume is in milliliters. For my Alaris users and everybody else who needs it in gravimetric, grams per hour and grams. So with this, I want to talk about it. As long as you're using pure distilled water, we want to use pure water through the IDA-6. It's just better for the internal workings for it, but the viscosity of it is 1.00 grams of pure water per 1.00 milliliters. So if you program that into it, take that back. It's 1.00 grams per 1.00 milliliters, and this will automatically compensate. So if you need to read in milliliters or in grams, just select it from the screen. I want to show you something with this. So if I'm into channel 4, and I'm going to go to measure, and I started my test, and I went ahead and measured a volume. Let's just do that real quick. Where'd my syringe go? This one will work. I'm going to put some volume into this. Run a test here. Give it some volume. And stop my test. If I do that, you'll see that I have 5.65 grams. So with this, if I needed to read in milliliters, it's easy enough. I simply go back to my back screen and measurement. Yes, complete. Nope. All right, try it again. Sorry about that. I pushed the wrong button. I got too excited. Connect this. Now let's put a volume to this. All right. Now, I'm going to hit stop on this. And you notice I'm reading in grams. If I needed it in milliliters and I forgot, easy enough. I go to my back. Cancel this. I'm going to go here to my 3 lines. I'm going to go to settings, and I'm going to change that to milliliters and flow to milliliters an hour. Now you'll notice it changed my unit of measure. As long as I didn't finalize this test, I can change that unit of measure. So now I'm in milliliters per hour, which is where I need to be for my syringe, I guess. All right, discard that. Let's go back to our settings here. So settings, all the different units of measure, 0, adjust pressure. You might have heard the pump running here a little bit. The reason you heard that running is because I introduced pressure to it, and I haven't zeroed my channel in a little bit. So I was down near the seacoast here a few weeks ago doing a demo, and I zeroed my pressure. Now I'm up in the mountains of western Pennsylvania, so I have a pressure differential. So you can see this sometimes if you select millimeters of mercury on your occlusion pressure. If you have that screen and you see some pressure, you just simply go to the channel and you push 0 here, and it'll zero that pressure out. Again, for all those traveling technicians who are going to be moving through different elevations, you're going to need to do that. So there's my 0 pressure transducers. My screen says my backlight and my volume. My languages, I'm assuming I'm in English, but if I need to speak in Espanol or Dutch or Italian or Portuguese, all of them are here. I can change my keyboard language, date and time. You can set it here for all your different formats. Printers. You can print reports right from the IDA-6 to your printer. So this is where I'd standardize my printer. Here's my network. You can see that I'm connected to my guest Wi-Fi. It's super easy to connect to Wi-Fi from here. OneQA. So I'm going to show you something here. So I just synchronized here. I just sank here. So I'm going to go back in my screen. I want to show you something here. Let's go back to my results. Remember, we just did a test. So here's my test we just completed. You notice I have no cables connected to this IDA-6. So if I go down to that OneQA, so settings, OneQA, and I push synchronize now, that's all I have to do because I'm on that Wi-Fi network. It's going to synchronize this IDA-6 to my system. Synchronizing, and depending on how many tests you have in there, this could take a little bit. So once it goes through and synchronizes, and then you're done. The other button, last synchronized, it just went through, so we're good. And now we can go down here to about, and this is what channels are installed on this. If I changed out these channels, you will see this serial number, firmware and calibration date changing. That's all tied to a specific channel. Also, in case you ever have to do a firmware update, you can do your own firmware updates, and you simply do it here and system update. It's that simple to do. That's it. So we've walked through the IDA-6. We've covered a whole lot of information. There's a whole lot more to this IDA-6 we didn't even have a chance to get into. I want to show one more thing here. As I did all this information, everything pulled into here to my OneQA. Now that things are synchronized here, I can use my OneQA. I can go up into my assets and then my reports. I can print reports. I can attach it to my CMMS. If I had an API, it's synchronized for me automatically. All kinds of functions and features built right into OneQA. It's a whole nother subject. Oh my. So much to talk about this IDA-6. If you haven't had a chance, please get a hold of one. Wait. One more thing. For my Alaris users, a little hack. I've been doing a lot of Alaris testing with my customers, and I found this to be so helpful. You have to use your imagination here just a little bit. But for all my Alaris techs, what I've been doing is I use 2 channels because I have to still use that Alaris software, right? So I have the Alaris software on my PC. I'm running the Alaris software, but you need to have 2 sets. Alaris recommends that you have a calibrated flow tubing set and a calibrated pressure tubing set. So what I did is I took the 2-channel IDA-6 and I hooked my flow to one channel and my pressure set to the other channel. And when I'm doing my layers and I'm going through all the procedures, only thing I did is I changed out my tubing. I grabbed the set for flow, put it into my infusion pump, did my flow test. When it was time for occlusion, I took that set out, plugged in the occlusion set, and ran my occlusion test. Even there, we were saving a lot of time. I want to say like 3 to 5 minutes per pump because we didn't have to change all around. We didn't have to dump the cylinders. We didn't have to dry the cylinder. We didn't have to tear out the scale. And again, those scales aren't transportable because if you move the scale, you have to re-zero it. So we actually saved a lot of time. And all my Alaris customers are really excited about this again because now they can take this and go out to the floor and find those last few channels that they normally have to spend all day walking around and bring them back to shop and lose a lot of time and transport. Sorry, but your step count's going to probably go down with the IDA-6 because it's going to save you a lot of walking doing infusion pumps. All right, now I've covered a lot. I don't know if we're good with time or not, but we're going to open up for questions. So thank you very much, and let's hear your questions.
Well, thank you, Justin. That was a great demo of the IDA-6, and thank you everyone for hanging on with us. We have just a little bit of time here for Q&A, and I wanted to jump right into it. Justin, my analyzer requires repriming after each test. Does the IDA-6 require repriming?
No, actually it doesn't. Once you prime the channel one time, because it's using that piston-driven stepper motor, you don't have to worry about losing that prime out. So after you reprime it one time, you can just go right into the next flow test, Now for the Alaris folks, it's built into part of the procedure to go ahead and do it's like a 30-second or 5 milliliter prime. Go ahead, just let it run, and then you start the test once it completes that. So you don't have to alter that software, just go ahead and let it run. Just run right through the IDA-6. When you get ready to run the actual measurement, push play and off you go.
Great, thank you, Justin. We'll try to get one more in. My infusion pump manufacturer service manual is instructing me to use scales and weigh the fluid. Can I use the IDA-6 in place of this? Sure can.
You sure can. The IDA-6 is capable of reading in both volumetric and gravimetric. So as long as you remember that 1.000 milliliters weighs 1.000 grams of pure water, it's a direct conversion. So you can run one and reading the other. And the IDA-6 is capable of flipping back between grams and milliliters. So you can 100% do it with the IDA-6. And in fact, what you might find is you're going to have higher resolution with the IDA-6 than what you're doing with the scale. A lot of the scales I see read to 100th, and the IDA-6 is able to go to 1,000th. So you'll have a much more resolution.
Again, Justin, Mike, thank you so much for the webinar today, and everyone for attending today. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you all. Take care.
Reach out if there are any questions. Have a great day.